Hey, welcome. I'm Sturdy McKee with the Focus Forward Business Podcast, and super excited to have Jeff Ostrowski here. Jeff is the CEO of Excel Physical Therapy with over 20 locations in Eastern Pennsylvania, and he's here with us today on the podcast. Thank you so much, Jeff, for being here.
Hey, you're welcome, Sturdy. I appreciate you having me on, and I hope I can help your audience out.
Undoubtedly.
All right. Let me just correct a little bit of the intro, if I may, though.
Sure.
I am no longer CEO of Excel Physical Therapy. I'll just give you a little bit of background. How about if I start there?
Please.
I can weave that in. So I've been a practice owner since 1990. So we're talking over 30 years. Same business, been around a long time. About 3 years ago, we had grown significantly. We now have 35 clinics in southeastern Pennsylvania, about 175 or so full-time therapists, PTs. And about 3 years ago, I guess it was, we decided to hire on a management team to replace me and my partners who are operating as the management team of the company at that point. And so we brought on a CEO, three regional directors, a chief financial officer, some other management, and essentially replaced, me and the rest of my partners in terms of our day-to-day operating responsibility. So we still own the company, but I no longer go to work every day to run the company.
Even before COVID.
Even before COVID, yeah. Right. Well, actually, during COVID, of course, it was all hands on deck during that period of time. So all the partners came back in and helped out and got things back on track. Which we're now more or less back on track. We can talk about that a little bit more if you'd like. But anyway, that's the story. So it's kind of an interesting story. It's sort of unique. I think most people are familiar with, you get your practice up to a certain size or EBITDA, and then you sell it to somebody. And we just didn't feel like that was the right decision for us at this time to do that, because it's a really growing, dynamic industry to be a part of, and we just felt like, hey, if we sold it to somebody now, we would miss out on a lot of good opportunity there. So why don't we kind of turn it around, bring someone in? We can still stay on as investors in the company, stay on as the board of the company, as advisors, do special projects, but enjoy some of the fruits of being sort of retired, more time, being able to travel a little bit more, and those sorts of things. So it's been a great experience, a lot of fun, and so that's kind of where we are today.
Well, so let me ask you this: when I just released my Pillar 1 course on your business playbook, and we had talked about this briefly, but what's the importance of the playbook and being able to bring other people in to run the company, to run multiple locations, geographically dispersed? How has that factored into your experience, your story?
Yeah, that's essential. If you're going to, I think it does depend a little bit on your goals. So let's start there. If you want to scale up a business, Sturdy, you've got to have systems in place. You've got to have the playbook you're talking about. You've got to have training programs in place. You have to have that whole infrastructure built in order to grow. Now, some people may not want that as a goal, to grow.
Sure.
And that's of course fine. And, it's a free world, and everybody has their own goals and ambitions and desires and work tolerance and risk tolerance and all those things. So, but even if you are a smaller business, you still have to invest in that infrastructure and systems. And I can speak from experience here, because I started my company back in 1990. It was just me, and those were days when when you're young and you're small, you can hustle and you have a lot of energy, but it gets exhausting after a while if you were running around with your hair on fire constantly, and you can't take a vacation because you can't sort of hand off the business to somebody else even for a week. And that's very tiresome. And I think that to me was the wake up call early on, was that, hey, this is fun, and I'm enjoying, the sort of excitement of being an entrepreneur and holy cow, people are actually coming in that door to see me as a PT. They think I can help them. I mean, it's very gratifying, but it starts to wear you out after a while if you're always on that kind of hamster wheel, I call it. So, I think a key pivotal moment for me, and there's been an evolution of this over the years, is, just really being disciplined and sitting down and starting to like kind of memorialize all of these policies and procedures.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. This is the way we do things. And what that does for you is that's, then you can train people. You can actually bring people in and show them, this is how we do it here. And you have that kind of manual to point to if something's going off the rails, with one of your employees, or something's going off the rails financially. Maybe you've strayed from doing it the successful way that you developed.
Right.
Or it could be time to go back and look at the way you developed it and look for a new, more creative, better way of doing that as industry changes.
Cool. Thank you for that. So you mentioned 1990. Let's go back. How did you get started in business, and was Excel your first business?
Yeah, it's my first and only business. So the way I got started, I was working in I was working in an outpatient clinic in Philadelphia, which is near where I live. And I had a patient in this outpatient clinic, Sturdy, who was a member of a gym. And it was a gym in a hotel of all places, but it had a pool, and he had an injury that he needed to have aquatic therapy, and there wasn't a lot of that back in the city at that time. And I had a nice relationship with this patient. He liked me, I liked him. And he introduced me to the manager of the gym, who was looking for a PT to come and set up a practice in his gym. All right, this gym is probably as big as that room that you're sitting in right now, Sturdy. It was tiny, rusty old equipment, and it was pretty beat up. And the only room he had available for me was a little bit bigger than a closet. But anyway, I just thought, I had a friend, Matt Gibble, his name is. He's a childhood friend of mine. He's a PT. He owns a practice up in North Jersey in the Bergen County, New York metropolitan area. And he had just started a practice at the same time. And him and I are, best friends. And he was sharing his experiences with me. I, at that point, was in business school. I was getting an MBA from Temple. I never completed it because the practice got, so busy. But so I was kind of interested in business. I had this friend inspire me. I had this opportunity. So it just kind of fell together that way, honestly. It wasn't really a strategic decision. It was more of an opportunistic decision. But sometimes those are the best things. That's how a lot of us get married. We don't decide to get married. We just meet the right person at the right time. So it's more opportunistic than strategic. But anyway, that's how it started. And then my good friend Joe Ruhl, who's still one of my business partners today, he joined me within a year. He was a fantastic PT. He had a lot of good physician relationships in his city. So I had more of an operational brain. He had more of a kind of a marketing, business development, relationship brain. And we just really hit it off as business partners. We grew our company up to about 13 locations. And then in 2011, we merged with another PT company in the Philadelphia market here. Put our two companies together almost 10 years ago is when that project started. It was a wonderful match, geographically fit beautifully together from a kind of a business goals and, just sort of values and personalities. The owners of that company and Joe and I just really meshed together just superbly. Just superbly. Everybody kind of has their lane of what they're good at. And then it's classic, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts kind of story. So anyway, we probably way more than double the size of the company since 2011. And just have had fantastic success. And these are wonderful people and some of my best friends today. So it's a really cool story.
So Jeff, do you wish at any stage, not just the startup when it kind of came together, but with the merger, with any of the steps kind of in between there, that you had done anything at all differently, that you had known something that you now know that you didn't?
Well, I think the topic that we touched on earlier, Sturdy, is key.
What's that? The playbook?
The playbook, the kind of the operations manual, the playbook. It took a long time for me to learn that the hard way. We made every mistake in the book.
We all have a lot of those.
Yeah. And I think if your listeners are open to that today, it's getting those things done now as opposed to waiting to learn the hard way like I did. And so, we wasted a lot of time, to kind of go through the kick in the head that you need sometimes to put systems in place. Like, one thing I'm not proud of, but I think it's happened to a lot of us, is we had someone, they didn't embezzle, but let's just say we lost about a couple $100,000 from having poor, cash tracking systems in place. This is back 25 years ago or so, and that's a completely preventable, unforced error right there. If we would have had, some systems in place to track that, it would have never happened. And, there are many, many other examples of that. But I think, putting those kind of investing in your infrastructure early is definitely worth it.
Yeah, great advice. So what advice would you give a business owner who is struggling right now with not having enough time?
Yeah, it's a tough one because you've got, it's sort of like a trap. It's hard to get out of because, it takes time to get yourself out of that trap and you don't have time.
Right.
But, I guess where I think we have had the best success from that perspective is with people, really working on making sure you're selecting the right people for your company, and we're talking about an interview process, and then making sure that when you get the people that have kind of agree with your values and the way you do things, that you then invest in training them really well. Now that's going to be hard and it's going to take time, and it's going to hurt for a while as the owner because you've got a lot of other things that you're doing. I completely acknowledge that. You may be seeing patients, you're trying to run the business. By the way, you might have a family, that you got to go home to. But the blood, sweat, and tears of living through that strife where you're working with people and you're training them pays off, because then, they can take more responsibility. You don't have to be the guy or gal who does everything and runs around and checks on everybody all the time. And, and it's a really cool thing when the trust factor starts to grow, because, as you hand responsibility to people and they respond to that, it just develops this really cool trust factor. And the kind of place where people enjoy going to work, they feel fulfilled, they like it, they respect it, they like you, they like me, and they get something out of it more than just a paycheck.
No, very cool. Thanks. Sorry, there are fire trucks going by in the city. Apologize. So I once heard somebody say that business is a problem. The only question is, what problem will there be today? How big is it? What's it going to be? So what challenges are you currently facing? And I'm asking this of you particularly because having been in business for 30 plus years now, I think a lot of people, and as you said, you've hired a management team, all this, the perception very often I see from so many business owners is that I'm struggling with all this and everybody else has it made, they figured it all out.
Right.
So what's your take on that? Yeah.
I think the struggle for a company at my stage, so, we're talking 30 years now, is it's consistency. All right. And I think that it would apply to a company really at any stage.
Sure.
It's the replication of successful actions over and over and over again, and really not straying from that. Now, the one thing about our PT world, and I'm in the outpatient world, I'm assuming most of your audience is too, is, we do have some constraints on us. You've got kind of regulatory constraints. You've got competition. there's not a huge amount of room for creative expression, in the outpatient world. It's more of how can I consistently execute at the highest possible level and just keep doing that over and over and over again. And that's as you grow, it becomes more challenging because, you're just shepherding a larger, kind of flock and trying to keep everybody moving in the same direction. But I think it's the consistency factor. That's the biggest problem that we confront. And you need checks and balances on your quality, your net promoter score, of course all of your statistical and financial measures. You have to have a really good knowledge of what your parameters are, where you can live with a therapist who's kind of in this parameter. But if someone steps out of that parameter, well, okay, then we need to go and fix that person, with more training, more coaching, whatever that may be.
So you've established targets, performance expectations that you can then benchmark against. Or
exactly.
no. Okay, perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've, over the years, I've learned, I did not grow up playing baseball. And I talked with Dan Rutenberg, who has played it, professionally at times, just not too long ago. But my boys play baseball, and my one son's very serious about it. So I've spent the last decade learning an awful lot. And I think about what you just said as very much like baseball. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel, reinvent the sport. It really comes down to execution and how well, you know what your role is. Everybody knows what their role is, and they need to do it really, really well in order to compete and win.
That's exactly right. And, I know practice owners who, they may have, let's just say they have 10 PTs in their company, Sturdy, and they've got, one that is billing, $250,000 a year or they're billing, they're generating $250,000 a year in income in revenue into the practice. And then they've got another one who's generating $150,000. Well, that's $100,000 spread between two PTs is big. And by the way, it's not uncommon. And, so the question is, what is this person who's generating $250,000 a year doing that this person is not doing? And how can I take and leverage, the top performer here, their skills and strengths to bring this bottom performer up?
Well, and that's a great point, because that applies to, if you have a restaurant, you have servers and sales. If you have salespeople, that's going to run the gamut of any business. And I think your point's extremely well taken, Jeff, with what's the top performer doing and how do we then make that, our play, the way we do things, and teach the rest of the team.
Exactly. It's really, really critical. And especially with, that creates kind of headaches and weird ideas in your mind, like, oh, I really like this person, but they're such a poor performer. It's not about whether you like them or not. I mean, I think by and large, our crew of our tribe or whatever of PTs are, we're likable people. But, it's not about that. It's like, we've got a business to run here. There's a certain expectation of exchange. I'm paying you a salary and benefits, and I'm expecting this from you in return. And so if you go at it with that kind of mindset, it takes the kind of the difficult conversation tension out of the room if you just look at it from that perspective.
Well, back to the baseball analogy, right? If you're going to play shortstop, you're responsible for producing certain things. You might be a lovely person, but you might not get to play shortstop.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So, Jeff, what's your proudest moment in business?
I think it's the merger, Sturdy. I think that was really very unique. I don't know any other companies of our size that have been able to pull that off so successfully. And we did it quite quickly, probably got most of the heavy lifting of it done within about 6 months of when we actually signed the documents to merge. And what was so rewarding about it was that the investment that we make in our people, that they trusted us, that this was the right decision for the right reasons, and they fully cooperated, enthusiastically cooperated with the transition, from both companies that merged. And that was wonderful. And then one more thing about it was, we get pride of authorship in our businesses, right? Like, this is how we do it here. You've been in those conversations at conferences, like where people are standing at the bar and having a drink. And
never been to a bar at a conference, Jeff.
I've seen you. But you stand there and you basically just say like, well, this is what we do. And then the other person says, well, this is what we do. And it's kind of like this arms race of, this is what we do. And I'm not sure there's a lot of listening going on. There's a lot of talking, but not a lot of listening there, because, everybody thinks their ideas are good and they work. And when we merged with the company that we merged with, we just put all the ideas on the table and really with no ego and, no pridefulness. We just said, all right, what's the best idea here? Like, let's just truly examine these ideas, figure out what the best one is. If none of the ideas that we have are any good, let's come up with some new ones. And we came up with a lot of those. So we essentially rebuilt the company, a brand new company with some ideas from our company, some ideas from the other company, and then a bunch of new ones too. And that was a really cool process to go through, just to kind of be in a room of people who, we all cared and we wanted success and all the rest of it. But there wasn't there was no like ego fighting like that at all. It was actually quite refreshing to be in a situation like that.
So Jeff, what role do you think like culture and values played in that?
It was the foundation of it, Sturdy. We wanted to be great. We just literally said, we want to be the best outpatient therapy company in this area. So that really was the start of everything. We all were unified there. It wasn't about money. We knew that if we were great, the money would come. It wasn't about the size of the business and how much it was going to sell for someday, because we knew if we were great at taking care of patients and taking care of our employees, that the money would come. And so we always said, all right, what's best for the patient here? Make every decision about what's best for them. And then secondarily, what's best for the team, the employees here. Let's make every decision about what's best for them. And when we, just in sort of following those two guide rails there, you never reach that goal of being the best, but we're still on the march, and it's really what carries us forward today.
Keep striving. I love it. So what's the biggest thing you've learned more recently that you wish you had known 10 or 20 years ago?
Oh boy. I think it's you've read the book Good to Great, right? The Jim Collins book. It's one of the classic business books. Probably many people are listening right now have certainly heard of it, if not read it. Mm-hmm. There's a chapter in there. I mean, they're all good, but one that really always stuck with me is the one on the hedgehog concept. And what that means is, like, pick one thing and be really good at that, and then just kind of keep doing it over and over and over again. And I bring that up because we, over the years, there's a lot of talk in our industry about alternative revenue sources, for example, like fitness, wellness, personal training, all sorts of things like that. And again, being around for 30 years, we've tried them all, Sturdy, and we tried every single one of them. And every time I can literally go back and look at our income statements from those periods of time when our attention was diverted into other business opportunities, which were fun and sexy and cool. And all the rest of it. But we always underperformed financially when we diverted our attention away from our core business, which is outpatient orthopedic manual therapy. So I think that for the lesson learned for me is, when we get new ideas like this now, like other kind of business opportunities, even though people love it, and who wouldn't want to have a golf program and work with golfers? I love golf. I like to play golf. I like to talk to golfers. I like to watch golf. It's really cool to have a golf program, but good Lord, I mean, I had one once and it almost cost me a clinic. So just focusing on one thing and doing it really well, and just keep doing that over and over again.
Well, thanks for that. So can you share with us like your favorite business book or one that you're currently reading and what you find useful or important about it?
Well, that book is my favorite, Good to Great.
Good to Great, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not rocket science there. That's been probably one of the number one business books for a long period of time. I think there's just an enormous amount of practical content in there. So I think other than that, nothing, let's see, I'm just trying to think of a couple others. A couple of years ago, I read a book called, in fact, it was Dan Rutenberg, I believe, that introduced me to this book called Conversational Capacity.
Okay.
I know you've had Dan on your podcast recently.
Yeah.
Really good book to help with those difficult conversations that we tend to shy away from sometimes. I mentioned before how sometimes you have to, the way to fix your business is to fix the people in your business, and sometimes those are hard conversations. And this book was extremely helpful to me in terms of just getting better at executing, those grassroots one-on-one difficult conversations.
No, that's a great point. I've heard it, so I forget where it came from, but the one who's willing to have the most difficult conversations is going to win.
Yeah.
So, no, that's a great point. So any other thoughts that you'd like to leave us with today, or leave the listeners with?
No, I guess, yeah. I didn't mean to say no. Yes, I have some thoughts. It's a wonderful time to be in the outpatient PT business. There's an enormous amount of opportunity out there for us. We have yet to scratch the surface on, accessing all of the patients who could benefit from our services.
Sure.
We're just now kind of getting traction on society recognizing the value of who we are and what we bring to the table in terms of healthcare. So I just want to encourage people to, don't think big. Don't be negative. There's some uphill battles. The payment side kind of sucks, and the hoops we have to jump through with administrative burden and all that. Those are awful, but I think there's better days ahead there. And if we, really truly can focus on what it was that originally attracted people like you and me into this world of ours is, we're helping people. Someone walks in the door, I treat them, I build a great relationship with them, help them get back to doing what they're doing. They bring me cookies and brownies when the treatment's finished. I mean, come on, this is a great way to make a living. And if you could just harness, that altruistic kind of value system that we all came into PT school with, and use that to build your company, then I think chances and opportunities for success are just enormous.
No, I love that. That's a big part of the vision work we do with the higher purpose. If you're losing touch or getting burnt out, why in the world did you start this in the first place?
Right.
And get back in touch with that, because I don't know a single therapist, and I actually don't know a whole lot of business owners generally who went into it just to make a bunch of money. There are those, but usually there's some kind of compelling basic reason that they decided to do this crazy thing of starting a business in the first place. So that's a great lesson. Thank you so much.
Great. Hey, I'll just add one more thing, Sturdy, too, that I don't know if any of us who are listening have ever been patients in PT before, but I just want to, I've been a few times, I've been a patient with a bad knee from playing volleyball, and it's not easy to be a patient when you're going a couple times a week, 3 times a week, maybe. Sure. You got to leave work early. You got to get home for dinner late. You got to change your clothes. You got to park. You got to drive. You got to get all sweaty. You got to pay. It's not easy. So I think we all need a reality check frequently that the patient is making a lot of sacrifices when they come in the door. And sure. We have to just be on our A game from both a clinical competence perspective, but also from a service and empathy perspective when they come in. And I think it's a good thing to talk about with our staffs a lot, and always kind of go back and ring that bell about empathy and service and clinical excellence. And because that's really, at the end of the day, people are expecting you to get better and have a good experience. And that's how you grow, is, by creating, a momentum behind all those good experiences. No,
that's great. Thank you very much. That's a wonderful last kind of closing thought here. So thanks so much, Jeff, for your time and for doing this.
My pleasure, Sturdy. Best of luck to you and everybody listening. Thanks.
Thanks.